that I would like to call the school board meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded this evening. We are here in personal time, but it still is going to be recorded and will be disseminated on our NLSD Media YouTube channel. Okay. If we can now proceed and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Disler?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Heckman? Here. Ms. Husak? Here. Mr. Keegan? Mr. Kern?
Here.
Ms. Culp?
Here.
Ms. Martineau? Mr. Fedorchak?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, public comment will be recognized with the agenda items. As board policy 903, all participants will be provided a period of 5 minutes for each public participation. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually. Moving on, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Now we do not have to do roll call, Madam Secretary, which also, I believe, will keep our meeting a little shorter. Okay, moving on. Special board reports. We have our solicitor's report, and we welcome Ms. Attorney Christine Rodak.
Hi, good evening. Okay, there are two topics I'd like to just summarize for you. One is Act 66, which was recently passed, and that permits students to attend an additional year if they meet certain qualifications. The qualifications vary depending upon whether the student is a special education student or a regular education student. For students having a disability, they would be eligible for an additional school year if they turned age 21 during the 2021 school year or between the 2021 school year and the 21-22 school year. They had to be enrolled in the district in the 2021 school year. And parent must elect that additional year no later than July 15th. The form is on PDE's website, and they have to submit that form to the district. With regards to the regular education students, let me take a step back. For students who have graduated with a regular high school diploma, they would not be eligible for this option. Students who are under the age of 18, their parent can choose to have them continue in the 21-22 school year. If students are over the age of 18, those students can choose themselves. Again, the deadline is July 15th for regular education students also, and the form would also be on PDE's website. This does, based upon PDE guidance, it includes students who are in kindergarten, but it does not apply to preschoolers. With regards to coursework, grade, GPA calculation, etc., the districts should be following their standard policies for that. Let's see, and if for special education students, if they would age out during that year, they're still entitled to attend that year. We can't, they'd have to attend the full school year. Are there any questions on that?
Thank you.
I would just comment that form, if anybody's interested, are also accessible on the district website.
Okay. And then the second hot topic right now is the Mahanoy School District, United States Supreme Court decision. Basically, the Supreme Court held that the school district in that case violated the student's First Amendment rights by disciplining her for her off-speech campus. Just to give a little bit of background, this was the cheerleader who was upset that she was not made a varsity cheerleader and would remain on the JV squad at an off-campus location using her personal phone. She and her friend made some obscene gestures and some obscene comments with regards to cheer, the school, etc. The school disciplined her by kicking her off the cheerleading squad for 1 school year, but it did not suspend her, it did not expel her. In Pennsylvania, there are a split amongst the Third Circuit cases with regards to disciplining students for off-campus speech. So it actually surprisingly did go up to the Supreme Court. The Third Circuit affirmed the district court's decision that the school district violated the students' First Amendment rights. But the big analysis on the case is dealing with whether or not the Tinker standard applies. As you may recall, Tinker was the seminal free speech case where the students wore the black armbands in the 60s to protest the Vietnam War. And under the Tinker standard, there must be a substantial disruption to the school or an invasion of individuals' rights in order for the district to be, the school to be able to discipline. In short, the Third Circuit kind of gave us a much clearer approach, which was we can't discipline students for any off-campus speech unless it constitutes a true threat. The Supreme Court got rid of that, and we are back to the analysis of whether or not the off-campus speech creates a substantial disruption in the school setting in order for us to be able to discipline for off-campus. So it's back to a very fact-specific, individualized determination. So, any questions on that? Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Moving on, the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Stoker.
And Dr. Stoker is not with us this evening. There will be no Assistant Superintendent report.
Okay. Business Managers Report, Mrs. Molitoris or Mrs. France?
We do not have any report this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do see we do have a Superintendent's Report. Mr. Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. For my report this evening, the first part of my report, I'm actually going to turn the time over first to Mr. Weber and Mrs. Butz, and they're going to give an update on our 2021 Summer STEAM Camp. So the floor is yours. Sure. And board members, there is a handout that looks like this in your packet. For the audience, this will be posted on the website. There's some slides for their presentation this evening. It will be posted on the NLSD STEAM website, which is found on the Slatington Elementary School page.
First, I want to thank the school board for allowing us to present one of the many great things that are happening this summer at camp, and it happened. This is our 3rd year for our summer STEAM camp, and the goals of our STEAM camp are to engage students in learning opportunities related to STEAM, to interest them in opportunities and careers, and increase their knowledge and application of content related to STEAM camp. And as I presented before camp to the school board, the camp is funded through an EITC grant, $20,000 that we received from Neff's Bank, and it's managed by the Northern Lehigh Education Foundation. And so I want to thank both those organizations for their funding and for continuing to organize and contribute to this really worthy program. This year, 2 years ago, when we had camp, our goal was 70 campers, which was, 60 campers, which was an increase of 10 campers from the first year we had camp, which was 50. This year, Ms. Butz and I decided that we were going to try to push the limits and have 70 campers come. And our budget never increased, so we're trying to work in the constraints of our budget to allow as many kids as possible come to camp. So we did have 70 campers sign up for camp. We had 65 campers attend, 37 males and 28 females. The average attendance each day was 58 campers, so it varied. We have doctor's appointments or children going on last minute vacations, things like that. Although we asked the kids to commit to coming for the full 2 weeks, that doesn't always happen. A lot of the focus this year was on simple machines, learning how to use digital scales, 3D avatars, water filters, egg planters, catapults, making mayonnaise, rockets, meringue, geodes, studying how erosion affects streams, making race cars out of toilet paper rolls, and then learning how to power them, using makey kits, which is a kit that has a circuitry that you hook up to a laptop, and students actually create code to do different things like making musical instruments or making controllers, and those are the two things they did this year at camp. They made Sankey, they did coding in other settings, they made parachutes for eggs and had an egg drop. I think Mr. Fedorcha was there the day that we did that. They created videos and edited them, and I'm sure I'm missing other things that they did. Every year, one of the things we try to do is we try to purchase items for camp that can be used also for teachers and students during the school year. And two of the big purchases we made were, we purchased a Makey kit that was about $800, which is a class kit and can be used in the classrooms all year long. The other purchase that we made that we were pretty excited about was we purchased digital scales. And the reason I'm excited about that is because I checked with the teachers at the elementary level to find out if they already had digital scales. And they say, no, we're still using the weights and balances scales. That's all we have. So now we have a set of digital scales that the classes can use, particularly the science classes, and the students can learn how to use those. Ms. Blitz is going to present about our career program.
So one of the things we really focus on at camp, we like to keep hands-on. But sometimes the students don't see the connection to how these hands-on activities go towards career paths. So 2 years ago, we actually started bringing in presenters from local businesses around the area, and this year we did the same. We had 8 presenters come in. We actually had 2 alum from Northern Lehigh come in and present about their careers. We had Rebecca Blocker and Frankie DeVillio come in and speak. We also had representatives from many local businesses. We had Ed Bechtel come in from Bechtel's Pharmacy. We had Maggie Edward come in from the Slabbery Dog Photography in downtown Slatington. We had Chad Swartz come in from the Lehigh Gap Nature Center. And we had Stephen Reimer come in from the Northern Lehigh Emergency Medical Services. We also had a few people that are associated with the district in several ways that still came and presented. Alyssa Wingfield from McClure came in and spoke to the students about mechanical engineering. So it's always exciting. The kids get to actually see what these people do, what skills they need for the future, what kind of educational path they have to take to get to those dreams. Typically we go on a field trip. This year we were unable to. I tried many different ways to try to bring in people. What was nice about the presenters, we had to schedule them out pretty far in advance. We gave them the option to present in person, a recording, and then eventually we were able to open it, recording virtually, and then eventually we were able to actually invite them in person. So we had several people do in person, a few recordings, and also a few Zoom calls. So it's really exciting. We just do this for a half hour each day, kind of give the students a break while they eat a snack.
Cool. And just to, I hate to correct her, but we actually had 3 alumni. Ed Bechtel was also a alumni. I know because I went to school with him. We also had some special guests during the week to come, and any year that any school board member would like to attend during camp to see what's going on, that would be great. Mr. Link came and toured to see what was happening. Dr. Stoker came. Kevin Schmidt, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of National Bank, came. He was very impressed, although it was kind of funny. He walked into the room where we're doing a lot with eggs. We had to order 72 dozen eggs for all the activities we did, and he stayed at the door and said, "I'm not going any further." But he was very impressed, and he did say that he was going to push to actually get us more than the $20,000 next year. So we're very excited about that because we are stretched to our limit of what we have to spend. Gary Fedorcha came, your school board president, and he got to tour. And it was
I ended up spending the whole morning with you guys.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
We
It
couldn't
really
get
was.
it out of
The
the
kids were
building.
wonderful,
Yeah,
and your teachers did an awesome job.
thank you. And then Christine Stafford, the vice president of the Northern Lehigh Education Foundation, came also because she wanted to see how our money was being spent. And again, I want to thank you for allowing us to have this camp every year. The children really seem to have a good time, really benefit, and hopefully we're piquing the interest of the kids to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Weber or Mrs. Butz?
Great job.
Again, congratulations on another successful STEAM camp. I'm excited to see what next year brings, and you and your entire team did a wonderful job, so thank you both. Next, I'm going to invite Mr. Scott Pine to the podium. Mr. Pine is going to give an update on our summer learning academies, which we have branded as Camp Horizons. Those are still ongoing at this time.
Yeah, so for the first time, at least since I've been here, we have summer programming available for all students. This summer we welcomed 112 students at the onset of the program in grades K through 8 to be a part of it. I guess we are calling the whole thing Open Horizons at this point because we ended up, because of staffing and student numbers, bringing it all together into one program. Just over halfway through the program now, we have 104 students remaining, 93%. So we did have some who left, who ended up having other things come up, things of that nature. We designed the entire summer program around a lot of research about what works in summer programs. From the design of the day, to the number of instructional minutes, to the attendance policies, to even just emphasizing the whole child rather than just those academic areas. So we are pleased to announce that this time the attendance rate, which is among the highest predictors of success of a summer program, is currently 92%. We anticipate that this will actually increase in the second half because we did have a lot of vacations that came up around the July 4th holiday, and so a lot of people used their absences during that time. Students in grades K through 6 are receiving academic instruction that's aligned to the standards, as well as special topics such as mindfulness, digital citizenship, phys ed, social and emotional learning, and coding throughout the course of the day. Each week on Thursday, I was going to say Friday, students participate in an award ceremony where they're honored for following all of the school rules, being safe, proud, respectful, and responsible, as well as for their academic growth. We are using our typical PBIS system, and I'm going to get to kind of in the last paragraph how that's going to play a role as we come to the conclusion of the camp. Students are enjoying the gamified learning environments with Imagine Learning, which we recently acquired. Hands-on learning with a program called Mango Math, which includes a lot of manipulatives and games, math games for kids to play. Differentiated small group reading instruction with a program called Reading A to Z, and ELA content from Scholastic's Lick. Our middle school students are also participating in engaging units that are designed by our teachers. Many of them are there for credit recovery. On July 29th, which is the last day of the program, we will celebrate the completion of Open Horizons with a carnival. And that's what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about PBIS, sort of like our Bulldog Bucks or our Peter Pauls. Students are earning throughout the course of the program tickets, which they will then be able to use at the carnival. We are currently soliciting and accepting donations to support this. We have already received $100 from Nest Bank and $500 from King, Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall.
Thank you, Mrs. Roddick.
You're welcome.
So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Pine. Are there any questions on the summer programming that Mr. Pine just described? Thank you, sir. Nicely done. Okay, the second part of my update is going to be sharing out the components of the draft 2021-2022 NLSD Health and Safety Plan, a plan required by all school districts in the Commonwealth to begin this school year. The template has been provided to us through PDE. Mr. Fedorcha, on the sign-in sheet, there's a number of guests that would like to speak to this topic. Would you like them to have their comments first, or would you like to hold until after I go through the plan?
Normally, in the past, we've always allowed the speakers to speak to items that are on the agenda as we come to them. So that's what we will do, and I would then open it up, if you would just call them.
Sure.
To come to the podium, giving your name and your address and your position. And then I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, so some people did not indicate which topic they would like to speak to, so when I call your name, please let me know if you would like to speak to the health and safety plan, and then at that point you can go up to the podium. If you're waiting to speak on another agenda topic, please wait until we get to that section on the board, or on the agenda. Okay? All right, so the first person that signed up actually is Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, you're good? Thank you, sir. Next one is Heather Royer.
Right here. Yes, I can go over there.
Thank you.
I'll try to go brief. I don't have too much to say. So I reviewed this health and safety plan. My name is Heather Royer. I live on 7170 Walnut Street in Slatington. I have a sixth grade, daughter who's going into sixth grade. I did notice that the masks were technically optional. I don't know if that's true on this, that will stay that way. What I did notice though, like this summer, kids went to camp, they went to church, they went on vacation, they played sports, there was no social distancing, there was no masks, and the item B in this plan talks about physical and social distancing. So at lunch, are we gonna still have the kids face one way and not be able to talk and have 6 feet? I don't understand this. All summer, if you look around town and your kids went to camp, my daughter went to camp, we go to church, we went on vacation, she played softball, they were in the dugout together. There was no social distancing, and we didn't hear of any of these spiked cases. The other thing that concerns me is the item E, which is the contact tracing. All those emails we got last year, which I understand are helpful, but they caused a lot of fear and anxiety, I think, in parents, because every time you got an email, you're waiting. Are we closing again? Are we closing again? And according to this, there's a possibility that can happen again this year. And for myself, I had to resign from my job last year to stay home with my child, who's too young to stay home, so she can be learning at home. Now, plan is to go back to work, but if she shuts down, if we shut down, then I have to be home again. Daycares weren't providing schooling for our children, so a lot of parents that left in the lurch, and I can guarantee you had a lot of students left at home by themselves with no parent supervision. I can guarantee that happened, because I worked in Northampton and I know that happened there. So my concern is, all these things are in place, and I understand it's for the health and safety of our children and our staff, but when is enough enough? Honestly. Now, these kids suffered so much last year, my daughter included, who was an honor roll principal's list student and did not even make honor roll until the last quarter when she was finally in school 4 days a week. That's finally when she was able to do what I knew she could do. She went up to her potential, because being at home was horrible. Emotionally it was horrible, socially it was horrible. So I was grateful when they didn't cancel softball again this year. She had fun with her friends. We were able to have Bible school at church. She was able to do camp this summer. So if these all things can have no masks and no social distancing, I don't understand why we can't have school.
Thank you very much. Next.
Next is Pauline, thank you.
I have sloppy handwriting, I apologize.
Actually, I would qualify it as fancy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm attending this meeting tonight to express some of my concerns with the health and safety plan for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. My first concern is why we even have a health safety plan in place for COVID at all. We are no longer under an emergency declaration, and all mitigation practices have been lifted. Who are we doing this plan for? Do we have a health and safety plan for the flu? Do we have a health and safety plan for the stomach virus, which typically wipes out our kids more than COVID did this past year and a half? My next concern is, why has Northern Lehigh School Board granted Mr. Link the authority to alter this plan without the approval of the board? Isn't this why the board is in place? You are supposed to make sure that one person, specifically the superintendent, does not have sole power to make changes without a governing body keeping him or her in check. Similar to the situation of our state of Pennsylvania, our governor went unchecked for over a year and a half. If Mr. Link is able to change this plan, and again, I'm not even sure why this plan is in place, the board should be involved in all changes in decision making. My next concern is the wording in the health and safety plan. It is very one-sided, and when I say one-sided, I mean that it caters to little, if any, parental choice. As of now, there are absolutely no orders in place for the state of Pennsylvania or the country, only guidance and recommendation at this time. Guidance is not mandate. It is not a binding order. It is just guidance. You are not bound to an attestation or an emergency declaration anymore. The only standing mandate at this time are the masks on the school bus because it's public transportation. Once the kids step off the bus, if a parent doesn't want their child to wear a mask, they don't have to, whether or not they're vaccinated. Vaccines are not mandated. You cannot ask a family if the children are vaccinated. Even the children under 12 that do not have the option to even get vaccinated at this point shouldn't be forced to wear a mask. Mask wearing should be a personal choice and not for the school to decide. That needs to be noted somewhere in the plan. My next concern is the quarantine measures. I'm curious to know where these outlandish numbers came from. At some point, a student could be out of school for 24 days because of exposure or illness and not even be sick. How in the world, as a school, can we let that happen? How is this okay? Why is the school dictating when a student can come back to school? Isn't that our doctor's job, or our doctors, our family, to tell us when our kids can come back to school after an illness? I don't believe any of you have a PhD at the end of your name, and if you do, it's a PhD of education, not medicine. Public education is going down a very slippery slope, and it's situations like this that are accelerating that slope to the point where parents are going to pull their kids from public school in droves and continue to fight for parental choice in education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. The only thing I would like to address is that the purpose of tonight's meeting is because the state requires us, the plan.
Okay.
Just so that, I
Thank you.
just want that clear. I'm
No, I
turning the rest over
appreciate that.
to Mr. Link to answer, but yes.
I appreciate
That's
that.
why we're meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Next, I believe, is Mrs. Williams. Angela? No?
Nope. He said.
Oh, no comment. Okay, thank you. Next is Natalie Snyder.
I need my glasses. Okay, so speaking to what is required by the state, I did reach out to State Representative Zach Mango, and I asked him the question of if my school district is receiving ESSER funds, can they lose funds if they change their health and safety policy to make mask wearing and vaccines optional? My understanding is that the PDE tells them to follow CDC recommendations. So if CDC continues to say that unvaccinated have to continue wearing masks, but vaccinated can stop wearing them, the school district will follow that guidance and say that they are just following protocol. They answered my email, and it was a very lengthy email, so I won't waste all your time or my time to explain everything, but the key words that they noted to me were that Secretary Ortego stated that the Pennsylvania Department of Education will neither approve nor disapprove health and safety plans submitted by LEAs. Pennsylvania Department of Education is only required to collect the plans and ensure the plans are posted publicly. The plan and any revisions must include a minimum of what is included in the health and safety plan at this point. And it lists it. You guys all have it. You see it. I'm not going to read it. The PDE has confused the situation by emailing LEAs on 6/11 with the following. After the order ends, universal face coverings, LEAs will have the authority to determine their own masking policies. So it is now up to the school district to decide what their masking policies are. LEAs should review the guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in making these decisions. The Department of Health and Education will continue to closely monitor CDC guidance and provide additional information as it becomes available. And then it just goes further on to just talk a little bit more about the safety plan. But my feeling is that since LEAs do have the authority to determine their own masking policies and the health and safety plan, and any revisions must include at a minimum a description of how it will meet the categories in the health and safety plan, I would like to take the time to provide the school board with my concerns, suggestions, and input that has been gathered from parents and concerned residents of Northern Lehigh School District. I would also like to mention that at this time, we have collected 187 signatures to date on a petition to end masking of students in the Northern Lehigh School District. Now, I know our plan is saying that we are going to make this optional at this time, but it doesn't state that we can that you guys will go backwards with that should any guidance change. And what we really are concerned with is that we follow mandated binding law and not just this guidance that is changing day to day. CDC just changed guidance, and it's basically saying that people who are vaccinated wouldn't need to wear masks, people who are unvaccinated would need to continue to wear masks. And that's a big concern to me. I did list, I went on to indicate all my concerns for each category of the health and safety plan. I am a little concerned with where, in the item number 1, where it states that the Northern Lehigh School Board of Directors grants the superintendent the authority to alter this plan without board approval to adhere to the released orders or guidance of federal, state, and local authorities, and in consideration of the number of cases in the district and overall community. If you're mandated or ordered to do it, it's a different story. But when you're just doing guidance, you're giving Mr. Link all the authority to make any changes as he sees fit. Not that we don't trust your judgment, but I feel that we have a board for a reason. I have suggested wording, which I can read to you, or I can just pass out copies to you guys for review. That's up to you. I don't know if you want me to waste all my time doing that, or your time. But should you use wording that I'm suggesting here, it might impact changes to the second item, which indicates that you're returning. Would you like me to read my suggestions? It's up to you. I don't know that I have all the
Well,
time.
I'm just going to share that there's a minute
Minute
left
left.
per the
Okay.
policy. We would be
So
happy to
as we
take
go
anything
through
in
each of the
writing.
items,
If you send it in writing
If you
to-
don't mind, I would love to provide some
If you would
suggestions
to-
and pass out these to you guys, if that's okay.
You have 5 minutes, but you can submit everything in writing to us.
Okay, all right, that would be great. The one item with the masking I was concerned with is just that it doesn't indicate that you're following binding orders, and that there is wording that says, should there be guidance that suggests, or you're following local and state, data that can change what's going on. A lot of the other items too are
15
pretty much-
seconds. Okay.
Pretty much, basically. So, I mean, they're all the concerns. I will pass it out to you. You guys can review it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You want to just count them down? There's, I think,
No,
10.
sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you
Snyder.
very much.
I was gonna keep the clip.
Mr. Terry Snyder was next, but it indicated that you would not like to make a public comment. Is that accurate? Okay. Next is Mr. Chad Crispin, and he would like to comment on the health and safety.
Secretary.
All right, good evening, ladies and gents. Chad Chrisman, 7340, Brigade 73, Slayton. Kind of shooting from the hip here, I don't have nearly as good a notes as those two fine ladies. They pretty much covered everything. My first ever school board meeting. I felt this is a pretty important topic, regardless of what your position is on either side. I'm basically just here to make sure that we are not losing touch in choices. Making sure you guys as a school board respect us as parents to make choices for our children that we see fit. So, you know, regardless of what the plan is and how you guys plan to proceed, I just want to make sure that our kids are given the choice to mask, to not mask, regardless of their vaccination status, and have them not be discriminated against in either direction. I know some people have some strong feelings in either direction about it, and that's okay. That's the great thing about this country. We don't have to agree with everything. There's been a lot of bloodshed since 1774 to make sure that we keep it that way. And it kind of starts here at the local level. Because if we lose it here at the local level, we're definitely going to lose it at the national level. So I'm just here basically just echoing everything that those two lovely young ladies had to say, that we hope that you guys don't follow blindly of guidelines and understand that, you know, enough is enough. You know, we gotta eventually move on. I mean, these kids have been all over the place in the summertime. You know, we're ready to resume normalcy, not new normalcy. And that's basically all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Mr. Justin Jakovitz would like to speak on the health and safety plan.
Well, my name is Justin Jackowitz, live at 6465 Woodbury Drive in Slayton. So everyone kind of stole my thunder, kind of going in the middle of the line up here, but I want to echo some of the things that were said just to kind of make them, just to make a point of them. As far as I know, we're here because ESSER funding this plan is mandatory. I don't believe the school district should take it. I think we're doing all right without it. We did all right without it before. I see it as strings attached block funding, which typically, you know, obviously it's going to go away. So any of the programs we put in place, they're going to last for, what, 2-3 years, and then they're gone. We're not going to receive any additional funding. So although I know, you know, we have to submit a plan to the state, I would recommend not, because I think we're doing all right without it. I mean, or just put a very generic one in place or whatever, and not really accept the funds. I don't think that as a local school district that we need the strings, you know, like I said, that come along with that funding, but that's just my personal opinion. A couple things, and I think Ms. Grady said the state of emergency is over, so as I read through this plan, I'm just going to kind of go through, I think I should be able to in 5 minutes here, is it talks only about COVID-19. We don't talk about the flu, we don't talk about pneumonia, and the state of emergency is gone. So why is there one plan? And I know the state's requiring it, but there's no mention of anything else. And flu and pneumonia, that impacts school-age children more than COVID-19. That's factual. We know that, again, in 2021 versus 2020. So to me, as I look at this plan and I kind of read through it, it's kind of silly to me because it's an emphasis on one virus and not all viruses, particularly viruses that have more of an impact on students, such as flu and pneumonia. So just wanted to kind of state that as well. As far as the mask go, again, you know, it's mentioned that they should be worn on transportation. I'm not sure if that is coming from the school, that decision, or if it's from Brandywine Transportation, if that's the case.
It's legally required.
Okay. Well, when I called Representative Mako's office, Tom Wolf's office, Department of Ed, Department of Health, it's up to the local school district. That's what I get from all of them. So, I mean, that's what they're telling me when I call. So to me, it's up to the school board on making that decision. It's not law. It didn't go through any kind of committee at the state level. So it's up to the school board. And I don't think that mask should be required anywhere. Again, the children are very, they're less susceptible to COVID-19 than most other viruses out there. So the absurd part of it is they're going to wear a mask while they're on the bus, but then they're going to be sitting next to their friend, their neighbor. They're going to go sit next to them in the classroom 20 minutes later. To me, it's absurd. I think Mr. Crispin said, we want them to get back to normal. Going into last year, I thought we were going to get back to normal. This year, I was like, there's no doubt we're going to, you know, the kids are going to get to go back and resume their normal lives. Here we are again. They're going to have to wear a mask on the bus to go sit next to friends in the class without a mask on. It just doesn't make any sense. So I would ask to remove that from the plan as you're going through it tonight, if that's possible. As far as the contact tracing and everything else, again, the state of emergency is over. To have a student, out of school for 10 days because they were exposed to a virus is absurd as well. Are we going to do the same for the flu? Are we going to do the same for pneumonia? I don't see it in a plan anywhere, so we shouldn't be doing it for COVID-19, especially since there's no state requirement to do so. And that kind of goes along with everything else. There's really not an emergency at this point. It was removed. I think we just need to kind of, keep that in mind and do what's best for the children. Again, this virus we know does not impact the children, so we need to let them go to school as normal and live their lives as normal. So as far as the survey goes, I didn't fill out the survey because there should be an option that says school 5 days a week as normal without any type of mitigation efforts. So if that can be updated as well on the survey, that's what I would fill out. I didn't fill it out for my 3 children. I think that's all I have. I guess everybody else kind of covered everything. I would just urge that we return to a real normal school year and forget about all of the COVID-19 restrictions because there's no state of emergency any longer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next community member that would like to speak is Katja Bender.
Hello, my name is Katja Bender. I live at 1067 Pine Tree Drive in Slatington, and I currently have 3 children who attend Northern Lehigh School District schools. I'd like to begin by thanking the school board for everything this year. I realize that your job is extremely thankless, and there's not a whole lot of people volunteering to do it. And I think even in normal years, it doesn't really matter what a school board decides. There will be people who disagree, and you're just not everybody's cup of tea. So at the same time, I would also like you to keep in mind that you are elected officials by a community whose children attend the schools that you represent. And as a parent, my first obligation is to my children and to the children in my community. Not every child has somebody who is willing to stand up for them and speak for them. And so I do not only represent my own children, but I represent children of parents who are either not able or do not have the ability and the means to stand up and say what they need to say. As far as my family is concerned, we really shouldn't have anything to worry about because we could make it work. We could enroll our children in a charter school if we didn't like what was going on. We could find a way to enroll them in private school, or if I really wanted to, I could even homeschool them. The fact is we have chosen public education for our children because we love public education. We feel that public education is the right thing for our society. But if you can lead me to believe that there's a potential for discrimination against students who are either not able to be vaccinated or who are not willing to be vaccinated by forcing them to wear a mask, and this way labeling them to other children and members of society as the not vaccinated. This will lead to bullying, this will lead to discrimination. In addition, it separates students into a class system. Those who are the good and the vaccinated get the privilege of not wearing the mask. Those who are not good and not vaccinated do not have this privilege. However, an 8-year-old child is not able to make a choice of whether or not to get vaccinated for themselves. So this is an unfair situation to put a child into. In addition, the masking of children seems to be irrelevant if the adult population, who is the one that's extremely at risk of COVID-19, has the ability to be vaccinated. As others have stated in item 1 of the Health and Safety Plan, where it gives Mr. Link the sole authority to make any changes to this plan, I personally feel that that is not public or democratic. The families in this community, the people in this community have elected a school board to make decisions for us and our children and our schools as a whole, not for one individual to have the sole power to adjust a health and safety plan as he personally may choose throughout the year. And in closing, I would just like to state, I actually met with our family doctor today, who is a board-certified physician who works through the St. Luke's Health Network, and I asked him what his opinion was and his thoughts were on masking elementary age children, because that is what applies to my children. He stated that he, as well as many other doctors and colleagues that he works with, do not feel that masking children is an effective strategy at this point due to the readily available vaccine for adults who are at risk. He also stated that there have been many studies coming out showing learning and developmental delays in children due to masking, especially for the younger children who are just learning things like speech, spelling, phonics. They are unable to see the mouths and faces of others.
45 seconds.
This causing delays in learning. When children were asked to draw pictures of faces, they were drawing people with masks. They do not even recognize what people's faces look like. They cannot draw expressions like anger or happiness. This is a concern for me, and it needs to be taken into consideration by the board when making all of your decisions tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So the last community member registered to speak tonight is Mr. Eric King.
Good evening. My name is Eric King, 336 First Street, Sladyton. As many others have already stated, I think one of our biggest concerns is the language that's used in our safety plan. Not to keep singling you out, Mr. Link, we have a board for a reason, and I don't say that if it was anybody else that had the authority, we would say it to them as well. One person should not have the sole authority to make decisions based off of their recommendation. If the teachers came to them and said, hey, we think all the students should have masks again, you shouldn't get to make that decision, nor should anybody else. It should be a board decision that makes that decision. A couple other things, the masks on bus, I don't know necessarily the legality of that. If it is true that it's a local decision that can be made, I think we need to look into that closely, because we didn't take temperatures last year getting onto the bus due to safety concerns with students on the side of the road trying to take temperatures. If a student in second or third grade or so forgets a mask, and now we have a bus driver sitting there saying, what do I do? Are the buses going to be keeping a pile of extra masks just in case? That's something safety-wise we do need to look into, how that's going to actually partake. I think it's silly to have them on. We've all seen the guidance. The masks physically don't do what they're supposed to be doing, so I think we should take a stand and say no masks at all. A couple other concerns is the language that's used is very specific and narrow. I think when we write this safety plan, we should write it more broad. We've looked at other districts in the area. We kind of narrow down on certain things that then we can be held to, and we need to make it broad and loose interpretation so that way we're not stuck doing one thing for the entire 9-month school year. For instance, the 24 days or up to 24 days out of the school. If guidance should change on that and we write down specifically 24 days in September, and in December or October something changes, are we gonna have to go by 24 days for the entire school year because that's what we wrote in our safety plan? Or should we write it more broad so that way we can make adjustments as needed throughout the entire year? Social distancing, like somebody else had mentioned, in lunches, it's kind of ridiculous to have kids all facing one direction when the entire summer they're out playing, doing whatever they want to do, talking to their friends. So that is something that should have went into more detail. So we went really detailed in some sections and really broad in other sections. So that's a big concern. One of the other things that wasn't brought up at all is, are we going to go back to using school lockers this year? Kids were carrying 20, 30 pounds of books around last year because they weren't allowed to use lockers. That's, again, something that we went really detailed in some sections, but didn't even look into that during the safety plan. So it may seem silly, but that's one thing that we should actually look into a little bit more to see how those things are. So, and I think that covers everything else. Everything else is kind of already been echoed by previous parents.
Thank you very much. Okay. I believe that's all the speakers that we have listed. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Ling to address the plan.
Sure. So the board members have the plan in front of them in paper copy. The plan was available for guests in the back. It's also posted on the school district website. So, many of the comments tonight kind of walked us through the components of the plan already. And first, honestly, I'd like to say thank you for reading the plan, right? That's kind of the first step. It is tentatively set to be approved for tomorrow. That will be based on the outcome of this evening's discussions, as well as last review date would also be this evening. If you look through the first section there, kind of the narrative under page 1, it does say that, our goal is to keep schools open. That's our goal, 5 days a week. We need to work together to be able to make that happen, which means that we are going to have some protective strategies in place. Right now, I want nothing more than our children to be in our schools and on our campus without masks. Our guidance from PDE and from our legal counsel is that on school buses, masks are required. In schools, they are not. We are making them optional. One of our speakers this evening said, we don't want to, I believe they used the word discriminate one group over the other, kind of what the expectations are. And I agree with that. If we're going to make them optional, that means they're optional. And that works both ways. So if somebody's being told, hey, you need to put a mask on and it's optional, that's where administratively we need to step in. But if somebody is, I believe the word was also used, ridiculing someone who chooses to wear a mask, then we also need to step in. Right? It kind of works both ways, and I think we can all support that. As far as the superintendent, right, me, being able to make decisions without first taking it back to a public school board meeting, that was also written in both ways. Okay, so if it gets to the point where we can scale back some things, we don't have to wait till the next school board meeting. However, if it also gets to the point where, for some reason, the cases spike to the level where I don't have enough staff to operate schools, I need to be able to say we need to go online. That can still happen. If we get to the point where the virus were to rapidly increase again, to the point where now we are talking about orders and laws, I have to obey that. I'm going to go back to my opening comment. My goal, our goal, is to keep schools open 5 days a week. That means some things are going to look different yet. Okay? We are not putting numbers on social distancing. We need to make good decisions about, we want our kids to be able to enjoy each other, interact with each other. We want them to see their teachers' faces. We want our teachers to see their faces. That's important. You're absolutely right. It inhibits instruction, especially in the English language arts area, especially for our youngest learners. I agree with that. So it's going to be a balancing act. Some things we're going to have to keep in place. You're going to see the stickers and reminders around the building. This morning we had a conversation about, we don't need to have those every 6 feet, right? We can start to, how about we go remove 50% of them in the building? At this point, it's just more about a cue, right? It's a visual cue. Around our, the lavatories, the bathrooms, the kitchens, you're still going to see signage about hand washing. You're still going to see signage about if you're not feeling well, let your mom or dad know. Mom or dad, please call the school nurse or consult with your family physician and pediatrician. You're still going to see those reminders. I agree. We probably should have been doing that every winter for the last history of public education, right? We knew enough about the flu at that time to say, hey, a lot of the things that we put in place this last school year, we probably should have been doing for a long time. Now it was put under the microscope, it was amplified, it was magnified, and here we are. We've learned a lot. There's a reason why the flu cases plummeted. It's because we were practicing universal precautions, precautions that are protecting us against all viruses. We need to continue to do some of that. That's kind of the first section there. So yes, administratively, we are requesting the board to give me the permission to say, hey, listen, either I've been ordered to do something or we need to take action, or we can start to decrease things that we don't have to wait until the next school board meeting. The topic will be discussed at the next school board meeting, which is usually approximately 30 days later.
If I can say something also, working with Mr. Link as a board for as long as he's been here, I do know that he would not make anything drastically done without addressing the board on those issues. And what he is saying, which is very important to us, is that we don't want to call special meetings to change the plan every time something changes. We want to be able to have that time and give it to the superintendent to make those changes without, when I say a formal board approval. But I believe at no time would Mr. Link do anything drastic without consulting the board. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Section 2 kind of talks about the number of the different types of services that we're putting in place. One of those requirements for the ESSER funding is that we have 20% of the funds available be dedicated for students that are most at risk. So students that are learning the English language. It's not their native born language. Students with special needs, students that are homeless, students that are in foster care placements. We have to do that. That's why some of these things are listed in here, and those groups of students are specifically called out. We talk about social emotional learning, mental health, ways that we can ensure that families have access to resources, whether within the building. I'm not just talking academic. I'm talking academic, social, emotional, mental health, and in some cases, and we do a lot of this, obviously we don't advertise it because we like to protect the privacy and confidentiality of our students and their families. A lot of support with them with things like access to basic life necessities, shelter, a roof over their house, transportation to get to school if they need to move somewhere outside of our district. Things that we are bound to do, we also have to specifically call out in this plan. We need to make sure that they're aware of resources like the Safe to Say Something app. I'm not going to say that we saw a huge uptick in that, but what I am going to say is the reports that were coming in from Safe to Say, I think everybody's aware of the Safe to Say tip line, shifted away from, hey, we think this student may have a controlled substance on them, or hey, this student threatened to beat up another student after school, to mental health concerns, right? So we need to address that in here. I think we're all aware that the mental health needs of our students, families, and staff has escalated over the last 20 months, and I forget how many months it's been at this point. So we're calling those programs out. We're calling out a program specifically available to our employees. We are going to continue with programs that we have an amazingly strong foundation in, like our multi-tiered system of supports, addressing academic and social needs. That all has to be in there. And yes, there are dollars linked to that. As we kind of go down into what I'm going to call the table or the grid section of the plan, we've discussed masks. They are optional. On buses, my position that I'm presenting to the school board under legal guidance is that they have to be worn on our buses and vans. Modifying facilities, you're going to continue to see, like I said, the signage around the buildings. As recently as this morning, the long-awaited, so kids aren't actually drinking from a water fountain anymore. The long-awaited bottle filling stations are being installed. They got held up in the manufacturing and shipping delays that are happening across all segments of business and community. Those started to be installed today. There will continue to be hand washing and etiquette signs around the buildings. I'm sure you noticed as you came in the lobby here, there will continue to be the hand sanitizing stations around all the buildings, the stadium, the field house. Again, honestly, we probably should have had those installed years ago. Cleaning, sanitation requirements, we're going to continue to clean, we're going to continue to sanitize. We're going to continue to access and utilize the Halo machines when we think or we know that there was a positive case in a particular section of the school, whether it's a classroom, the nurse's room, an office, whatever it may be. We bring in our halo machines and we fog those rooms to a total disinfection. Under the contact tracing, this guidance has come directly from the PA Department of Health, and it has not yet changed. In fact, we went back to them after receiving feedback from community members about their doctors and their pediatricians were telling them differently. So we spent probably the better part of a week working through this with the Department of the Health, and they came back and they said, okay, you can now reduce these, and we did reduce them for the number of times that, the length of time that children or employees would have to be out if they were exposed. If they come out and they say that's reduced, we will reduce it again. If they say, okay, you can drop it down to, I don't know, 2 days or 3 days, whatever it may be. You know, we know that if somebody's vaccinated, whether it's a child of age or an adult, they do not have to quarantine. We're going to abide by that. Under the diagnostic, we're going to continue to ask the help of not only our students, but also their parents and guardians. If your son or daughter or grandchild or whomever it is that you care for that attends our schools says to you in the morning, I'm not feeling well, have that conversation with them and please err on the side of caution, keep them home and contact their pediatrician. The screening tool, remember that postcard that went out last year? It was about a postcard size thing. That's going to be accessible on the website. It's currently accessible on the website. We're going to let it there. Please reference that if you have questions in the morning. And of course, our school nurses are always a resource for you as well. Vaccinations to the school community. We held a successful vaccination clinic here in this building. Currently, we're not planning on hosting another one unless the community says they would like to have us host another one. But what we decided to do was put local places that community members at this point can pretty much call and schedule an appointment to go get a vaccine. There's not the long wait times anymore. We will continue to follow the appropriate accommodations for students with disabilities, following the guidance under the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and in some cases under Chapter 15 of State Code. And again, we will also continue to communicate with our local health and safety agencies, our local health agencies. We have a direct contact to an epidemiologist team out of the State Department of Health. There's a local person. She's here in the Lehigh Valley. In fact, she's planning to do a site visit in the upcoming weeks to learn more about the needs of our community. So we will continue to communicate with them as well. So those are the sections of the health and safety plan. At this time, I'll open it up to the school board for questions.
Anyone on the board?
Yeah, I'd like to clarify something, and I think it'll answer questions, parents' questions also. Regarding wearing the masks on the bus, someone indicated they contacted local congressional officials, I believe, or federal officials,
Representative Zach Mako.
and got a different answer than what our attorney is telling us. Can we reach out to Zach Mako and find out why he said what he did to the parents?
Yes.
That it's,
Also, we are the only school district that has the mask on transportation. We've looked at other school district plans, and again, they're very generic. Ours is very specific. So why are we the only one following that guidance and other school districts don't have it?
And of course, we can't speak to other school districts as to what they put in their plan. You know, but again, I'll look to Attorney Roddick to say, do you want to offer any clarification on the legality of that clause?
Yes, it is pursuant to the CDC's order requiring masks to be worn on public transportation conveyances. So that includes schools, buses, planes, things like that. And it's an order, it's not a guideline. So at some point in time, they may lift that order, and then the plan can be revised. This is also a moving target. The guidelines have been changing over the past 20 months, as Mr. Link has said. So If it changes again, this can be revised. But that is currently an order that is in effect. It's a federal order, so.
Wait, it's a federal law, what is that?
It's a federal order. Mhm.
On federal transportation, now federal wouldn't count for state. It's on federal transportation.
Right, but a lot of the funding of the schools is tied to federal compliance.
So it's about funding and not about safety.
No, it's following the law. I mean, it's following the guidelines that are out there.
But the state of emergency is though for supporters, like you would have to go through an education committee now at the state level, correct? Because now there's no more emergency powers. So why are we following orders from the CDC that change 50 times over 20 months that don't make sense when you're on a school bus wearing a mask next to somebody? 20 minutes later, you're sitting in a closed building with them with no mask on. Why are we following that? Doesn't make sense. Whether it's federal guidance from the CDC or not, it doesn't make sense. That's what we need to make decisions about, what actually makes sense.
Are there any other questions from the school board on the health and safety plan?
If I may, just one quick question. Someone, I think, alluded to the fact that if you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, and if you are, you don't. And I'm trying to find that in here. I don't see anything in here about the vaccination being correlated in any way to wearing or not wearing a mask. Is that right, or am I misreading it?
That's correct. It's not in the plan. We do not require vaccinations. We're not going to require vaccinations unless we are ordered to, and it becomes like any other part of the vaccination battery that students have to enter school. Northern Lehigh School District is not looking to be preemptive with that. So students can remove masks, in other words, not wear masks, if they are not vaccinated, students and adults.
And the other comment I would make is there seems to be some disagreement on whether this is a state law, federal law, or whatever. If we pass this tonight, we're still going to have an August meeting, at which time, if we are incorrect, we can do some research, and we can always change that at the August meeting. It will affect some of the summer classes, perhaps, but we could certainly modify that in August for the opening of school in fall, correct?
You can. And I'll be honest with you, I anticipate different guidance coming down.
I'm sorry?
Different guidance will likely come down.
Probably will, yeah.
Right,
so,
because CDC
but
just revised it this
like you
past
say,
weekend.
Not etched
PD
in
is gonna
stone,
review
we'll
it.
have another meeting before school starts that we can modify if we
You
need
can.
to.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And if I can ask that somebody would contact
Yeah.
Zach Maker in office tomorrow
Yes.
and get a clarification of what was said to Mr. Davis.
Mr. Link, I do have one quick question on the contact tracing and isolation. There was, maybe I misunderstood or heard it incorrectly, but there was a comment made that if somebody is vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine.
That's correct.
Based on it says even if the employee or student is fully vaccinated, if they develop symptoms, the individual must isolate 10 days.
If they become symptomatic,
Symptomatic.
if they're showing the symptoms up, and again, that's coming right from the Department of Health. So it's possible.
So they would have to test.
They would have to test negative then. It's possible for someone with a vaccination to still contract COVID-19, which is why that's in.
But it's also possible for somebody who's not vaccinated to be asymptomatic as well.
Correct.
But they would still be tested though.
But both of them would still have to be tested.
Right.
So wouldn't they all still have to isolate? I don't know, maybe I'm missing it. I mean, I get the purpose of the vaccine and all of that, but I think it goes back to the same question of we're not asking people if they're vaccinated or not. We're not mandating or requiring it. It's a choice that people are making that I'm conflicted in the way the wording is on that one. Just a thought on that one.
Do you have suggestions for?
Take it out? I mean, I'm not sure, and that's the thing, I'm not sure, it seems like either our nurses or our administration is gonna have to make a choice to ask somebody if they're vaccinated or not, to ask them or tell them that they have to be quarantined or not. I feel it puts our administration and our nurses and even our teachers at some level at a really tough position to ask that student or that teacher, are you vaccinated or not?
And yes, we've been in that tough situation really the entirety of last school year. A lot of difficult conversations were had. We're coming at it through the lens of trying to keep schools open as long as possible. And I'm confident we can do that much longer than we did last year, if not for the entire year, if we all work together on, if we say, listen, you've been exposed, please go consult with your family physician and have them get back to us.
Yeah, I'm almost at the point of, it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not, because you still can have it, you can still get it, you can still pass it along, vaccinated or not. And I feel we're putting our administration and our district in a tough spot by not saying both have to quarantine.
Gail, I'm agreeing with you. I was just looking at that. I just think it's an extra step or that we put in here that really, it doesn't matter because like she said, we're not gonna ask if you're vaccinated or not. So if you approach it from a general standpoint versus if you're vaccinated, it's just that one section in here. Even if the employee or student is fully vaccinated, that person must, yeah, they have to quarantine. So I think if we just take that part out and you say if someone has symptoms, that's what we're talking about, whether they're vaccinated or not.
And it does say that. It says even if the employer or student is fully vaccinated, they still have to do it. They have to
Yeah.
follow the same procedure
Yeah,
whether you're
so-
vaccinated or not.
Right, so why don't we just let it go as a student instead of specific?
Natalie had put suggested wording in what she passed.
Orders, mandates. The guidelines can change, and Mr. Link might be changing this several times. But if he goes more vague in his wording, it might help him to not have to change this so much, because it would indicate that he's following the mandates, the orders, the laws, and not just guidance that might change everything.
So I'll just share with the school board and the audience again. This language was specifically drafted from the Department of Health, a team of epidemiologists, this guidance. They know much more about this than I do. If the school board wants to open the conversation about changing that part of the language, I would make the suggestion then that the child or the employee is not able to return until they're cleared by their family physician or pediatrician. There has to be a medical professional making that recommendation to us.
But then what if it's the flu? I've had employees at work that went tested because they had symptoms, and both times, 3, 4, 5 times, tested negative. So now we're gonna ask for a student, we're gonna ask for a staff member, a student, a teacher, or whomever. If you have the sniffles, stay out of school and go get a test.
Not everything's COVID. It's gonna get the whole.
So,
Again, I'm gonna recommend that if the board is looking to change the language in the plan, that part of the guidance to the school district comes from a medical professional, being that family member or that child or that employee's either pediatrician or primary care physician. If it is the flu, that person can come back to us and say it's not the COVID, they need to follow the typical interventions for when somebody has a flu. Either way, that medical professional is going to be giving feedback, a doctor's note, if you will, to the parents, the guardians, to share with the school district.
What if the kids constantly have allergies?
Yeah. So we put a plan in place for that for allergies.
My kids get tested every week for allergies.
Yep, and we did put a plan in place for that last year. What the primary care physician or the pediatrician says, this is allergies. We've accepted that. We changed that.
Right, but what if it happens every other week? Who's paying the co-pays for these?
No. It was like a one and done.
Okay.
Yeah, and we did change that protocol last year.
Right, but like she said too, you're gonna keep getting everybody tested. I mean, you're not gonna have anybody in school, obviously, at one point.
I believe we'll have a lot more this year than we did last year. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I mean, we got to the point last year where some classrooms had a handful of kids. Some classrooms didn't have any teachers. The teachers were instructing from home because they were on quarantine or had it directly. Right now, everything is trending towards, we're not there. But we still have to keep our guard up. So again, I'm gonna say back to the school board, I believe if we're gonna change that bottom of page 5 there, we have it be that they are cleared by their family doctor.
Any board members want to react to that?
I'm sorry, what did you say, Gary?
Does anyone want to react to Mr. Link's question?
This one right here.
I did have a question, more of a comment to the provision that we're talking about at the bottom of page 5 of 9, section E, about vaccinated versus non-vaccinated and quarantining if you develop symptoms. And my question was a clarification question of what Gail was saying related to this provision. So this implies that obviously if you are vaccinated and you do not have symptoms, you do not need to quarantine, even if you would technically be a person who, you know, was exposed based on what is above. Are you suggesting that we don't ask people if they're vaccinated or not vaccinated, and that would mean that everyone needs to do what is above in section E no matter what?
No, if they share with us that they're vaccinated, and we have not
Yeah,
been
but I
asked-
thought the conversation was, does it matter if we ask if they're vaccinated or not? And then if we don't do that, then everyone has to do the most extreme of section E.
That's not my interpretation of it. My interpretation of it is we're not, if they tell us we're vaccinated, we're gonna take them at face value. We have to have people be honest with us. We're not collecting vaccination cards.
Well, yeah, definitely not.
But if they're continuing to have severe symptoms, well, we want them to stay home anyway and go get checked by their doctor. If they're vaccinated, they've been exposed, they share with us they've been vaccinated, but they're exposed, we're not asking for proof of vaccination. They're gonna be able to continue to go to school until they start to show symptoms, if they start to show symptoms.
I just think it's that one paragraph at the bottom of page 5 where it talks about even if the employee or student is fully vaccinated. You're talking about before, if an employee or student tests positive for something, that's where they get to stay home. Do we need that other one, Matt? That's all I'm asking. Is it covered in a paragraph before or after? That's my question, the wording.
Well, a paragraph above refers to someone if they're not vaccinated.
Right.
But now we're talking about someone who is vaccinated but is symptomatic.
Right. So, does it matter? I guess that's what we're saying. Can't we just make that a general statement instead of whether you are or are not vaccinated? I think that's what Gail was trying to say also, right, Gail?
Yeah, but that paragraph though, Mr. Link above it, doesn't say anything about vaccinated or not. It just says if an employee or student tests positive.
Right.
So it doesn't go into vaccinated or not, and then even if they have never, so that's just about testing positive.
Correct.
So now it's just about, now the question is,
someone who becomes symptomatic but has been vaccinated.
Right, it's different. But it doesn't
So
matter.
It
It doesn't
develop
matter.
symptoms, the individual.
It doesn't matter.
So it doesn't matter if they're vaccinated or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Because
matter
we're-
if
we're
you're
saying that
vaccinated
if
or
there's
not, you still do the
symptoms,
same thing, or
They
am I
have
missing
to
something?
isolate.
Am I missing something? I don't know. If I am, I might not be reading it right, but it looks to me like it doesn't matter if you are or you aren't, you still do the same thing. You still do the 10 days, the 24 hours, et cetera, et cetera. Not so?
That's how I'm reading it, Mr. Green.
Are we agreeing on that? Yeah, okay.
That's
what I
how
thought.
I'm reading
Yeah,
it.
So,
That's how I'm saying.
I don't care if you want to let it in or take it out. I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, and we're
So
probably
it's-
gonna change this again next month.
So it doesn't matter.
So,
So if you're
Okay.
vaccinated or not, and you have symptoms, you have to quarantine 10 days.
That's what it says.
Okay.
If you're symptomatic.
10 days even if you have no symptoms too, right?
No.
That's what it says. You do. If you have no symptoms, at least 10 days.
If they test positive.
Yeah, if they've tested
Positive, then they have to
asymptomatic.
quarantine for 10 days.
Yes. The paragraph above is all about testing. Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm reading it, I'm getting there, Matt.
Is there like a different attendance policy than this year with all of this like quarantine stuff?
This is exactly what was in place last school year. And it's actually reduced the number of days of quarantine, because at one point, it was possible that someone would have had to quarantine up to 27 days, I believe. And this has backed it down to, it could potentially be as soon as, or as little as, I believe, 7 days, if it's through exposure, not testing positive.
27 days, even if you're dismissed by your doctor.
Last year, at the beginning of the plan, yes, and every doctor that we were working with at the time was following the same guidelines, because they were coming from CDC and the Department of Health.
Right, but like the attendance policy, because according to this, anytime my kid has the sniffles, I have to keep him home. And they're only allowed to miss like 10 days of school before you start getting the letters about like, yeah, the letters start at 7, but at 10 days you've reached a percentage or whatever. I mean, like, I want to keep my kid home, but I also can't afford to pay for a sick visit every single time they have some mild symptoms that are gone the next day. Like, how does this affect attendance policy here? Because
The attendance policy is still in place.
Modify with everything else than what she's saying for how many days, you have to keep a kid home for 10 days, you're already at your policy.
not consecutively.
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you.
I was saying, she was saying about modifying, if you're modifying everything else, you might as well modify your attendance policy for days if you have to keep your kid home because they're sick. So instead of 10 days, maybe it should be 15 or 20 days.
Yeah.
Or will they be allowed to do virtual learning while they're home for that 10-day or potentially 17-day period? Are you gonna offer that to those kids that?
There will not be live streaming for kids this year if they're at home. They will have contact with their teachers, and they will be able to have time upon return to make up any work that was missed that the teacher deems necessary. But we're not going to be doing the live streaming.
Potentially, if a positive person in your household tests positive, you have to quarantine 10 days with them, plus an additional 7 to 10 days after they return. So that means a child could miss potentially 17 days of school.
Correct. And again,
Give or take,
this,
weekends fall into that.
yes.
That's a lot of schooling loss, and a lot of makeup work. And that's not fair.
And I'm not certain why we're not allowing our own pediatricians to make a determination of when our kids can come back. I mean, there are doctors, they're following, you know, what they're supposed to. This just seems very excessive, extremely excessive, especially if our kids are basically sitting at home for possibly 17 days without any structure. I could speak on a personal level what 2 weeks does to my kid, and I'm sure everybody else sitting here can do. And that's where the whole personal choice comes in, parental choice. these are our pediatricians, we trust them with our kids, our lives, you know, they should be the ones writing the note saying, they're good to go, they can come to school. That, I mean,
So and again, I'll comment back to the school board.
Yes.
This plan was developed for us, this component of the plan, by the Pennsylvania Department of Health. This is their recommended language to us. This is the language that was put in place last school year. If you are going to, excuse me, if you are going to alter from this, I'm asking you to change the language that the student's not allowed to return until there is a written note provided by a medical professional. This is a decision that should be made by medical professionals. You should follow their guidance. If you're not going to listen to what the Pennsylvania Department of Health epidemiologist team is advising us to do, I'm asking you then to ensure that the decision is made by a pediatrician or a primary care physician, somebody that has medical training.
Mr. Link, could we just put a note in there to say that, to do that? Leave it the way that it is. But if a parent chooses to go take their student to a doctor, they're tested, they have this, and the doctor writes off and says they're okay to go back to school,
On such and such a date.
which isn't the 17 or 24 or 100 days, would that be acceptable? Or are you saying that in that case, this is the policy, it doesn't matter because we're gonna follow this, no matter what their pediatrician would say, or doctor, or whoever?
What I'm saying to the school board is, if you're gonna alter from the language in here, please include language that says a child can't return until they've been cleared by a medical professional.
So, Mr. Link, I would like to ask that we add language that says what you just said, which is, if a parent or administrator, because or teacher or whatever, because we're talking about the same thing, goes to a medically approved physician and they receive written notification that they are acceptable to return to school, that will supersede the current 24-day plan.
Yes. But, and again, this is a decision that the school board has to make. I'm trying to arm you with information. You ultimately have to make the decision. If that family decides that they are not going to seek the advice of a pediatrician or a primary care physician, then I urge you that we default back to the language that's coming to us from the Department of Health.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah, we just put that statement in from a medical, if they get it from a medical professional saying they can come to school, that's great.
Can we add a sentence to that?
Your kids can't return if they have strep, like they get a note from the doctor, you take your child to the doctor, doctor says your child has strep, they can return on this date. That's the note you take back to the school. It should be the same for this, when the doctor says.
I would suggest.
Okay, what I would like to ask the board, if anyone on the board would like to make a motion to add that sentence to, and then please state it as you would like it to be, so that we can have it correct, because at the end of this, we're gonna vote on this plan.
May I suggest language at this point for the board to, for someone to make a
You
motion on?
certainly may.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
sir. If the employee or student is symptomatic, whether they are vaccinated or not, they may only return to school upon written clearance from a medical professional in lieu of that written clearance, the district will enforce the recommended quarantine and isolation guidelines from the Pennsylvania Department of Health.
I like that because if they change the guidance, we're just saying we're gonna follow their guidance. Correct, Matt?
Yes.
I would add one word, which is qualified medical professional.
Yes, I was gonna say that too.
Why we have an attorney at the table. Thank you, Mrs. Roddick. I would like to amend my suggestion to a qualified medical professional.
I have a question, and kind of goes along with this. This health and safety plan that we're developing tonight, is this similar to our attestation form that we signed last year that we were committed to following the entire year then?
No, the attestation form is no longer in existence.
Okay, but does this
Take its place? No.
follow the entire school year going forward? Or is this not binding? Because last year when we had certain questions and comments, we said we have to follow the attestation form that we submit.
Sure, so the,
Are we submitting this and saying this is what we're gonna abide by the entire school year?
yes, we are going to abide by this if it's approved this evening. The attestation form specifically addressed masking orders and closing the school upon a certain number of cases within the school.
Okay, so the reason I say that, not to nitpick on this at all, is right now the current guidance is 10 days. If, say, November, December, guidance comes out and says, well, only 5 days is required, I don't want students to miss any time more than needed. That's why I said, well, we should make this as broad as possible to say whatever current guidelines are at the time, rather than say it has to be 10 days today, because if a student is out 10 days in November because of current guidelines, and in January guidelines are 3 days, well, they sat at home for a week for no reason, all because we submitted a safety plan that was very detailed today, not very broad to say what the current guidelines are.
And that is one of the reasons why we're saying that the superintendent would be able to make those changes as needed without going through a formal board meeting to change it.
And I absolutely agree, and that I
I mean,
understood.
but that comes into what you're asking.
Yeah.
If those guidelines come down, Matt can, and I'm sure he will, make those changes as they come, and we're not gonna be held with it in spite of that.
I just don't want students
Understand,
to
understand.
miss as little time as possible, and
That would be, I agree with Mr. Fedorcha. However, again, I am not gonna, if guidance comes out on a Tuesday, it's not going into effect on a Wednesday. We need time, our team here needs time to process and put a plan in place.
Yes,
So that being said, I believe there was a call.
So why not just
Roll call.
avoid
Okay.
this entire discussion of detailed wording and put in pursuant to current PADOH guidelines?
Okay, I believe we have an amendment to the plan that Mr. Link has put together. It's on the table now. I will take a motion to approve it. I believe, Donna, you did do
Yep.
that. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Understanding what we voted on right now was only the amendment. We have not voted on the plan yet.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Link.
Again, at this point, questions from school board members?
Anyone?
Could I ask the amendment that was suggested? I think I understand it, but could you maybe write that up and have that, when we finally approve it later on in the agenda, verbatim? Would that be possible, so I know exactly what I'm voting on?
Yes.
You know, we're not voting on this until.
We are not, but I'm gonna put a note on my
until new
agenda.
We're
business.
gonna vote on it within tonight's agenda, though.
Yeah.
On
We
tonight's-
will be voting on it within tonight's agenda.
Yeah, but not till new business. We're not gonna vote on it now. So if somebody could just write that up and
Right.
make a quick copy,
Correct.
I would appreciate that.
Okay. All right,
I don't know before we read it or
anyone else from the board?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, Matt, any changes that are made, you will go ahead and follow through with those, and then the plan will change accordingly, correct? from CDC, as the guidelines, for example, if they say the kids only have to stay home 3 days or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
After we have time as a team to review
Right,
that
right.
and put a plan in place.
But, so that doesn't mean this is gonna be in place for the whole school year.
Absolutely.
It can
Right, I
change.
put in lieu of
Okay.
that set.
Anyone else on the board?
What they want in lieu of the.
Anyone else?
Then current.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for your comments, all of you.
Current quarantine guidance by the Pennsylvania Department of Health.
Mr. Link, anything else?
Then current, okay. The then current, okay. Then current quarantine.
Okay. No, that concludes my report for this evening, sir.
Thank you, sir.
guidance.
Okay, moving on, we did hold an executive session this evening for personnel items. Speaking of personnel, I will now take a motion to approve the personnel items A through F. Do I have a motion to approve?
Here.
Do I have a second?
Guidance, okay.
I'll second.
By the Pennsylvania Department of Health.
It's been moved and second. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. I'll defer to Mr. Link for a comment.
I would like to congratulate all of our new hires this evening, but I would also like to take a moment to specifically recognize Mr. Todd, excuse me for a second.
Sorry.
To specifically recognize Mr. Todd Briner, who is now officially our new principal of Slatington Elementary School. Todd, if you can maybe say hello to the audience and everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank the board, thank the administration, staff members that may be in the audience, and the community for this wonderful opportunity. I know I have some big shoes to fill, but he's not going very far. And I'm extremely excited to get started. But more so, I'm more excited about being able to serve the community in which I live. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, we have a motion for conferences. We have only one item, and that's A. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Here.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Curriculum and instruction, I will accept a motion to approve the curriculum and instruction items A through H. A through H. Do I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have one financial item. Do I have a motion to approve the financial item?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. New business items. I will accept a motion to approve items A through C, understanding that A is for the safety plan, which has been recognized to be amended, so we're going to include the amendment in this motion.
At this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. Moltores to read the amendment to get it into the minutes.
If employee or student is symptomatic, whether they are vaccinated or not, they may only return to school upon written clearance by a qualified medical professional. In lieu of medical coverage, the district will recommend following the then current isolated and quarantine guidance by the Pennsylvania Department of Health.
Any questions on that amendment and the motion?
No, I think it clarifies.
Yes, I do too. Very good.
I move we approve new business items A, B, and C.
That's why we have
Pennsylvania Department of Health.
That's why it's really good to have our own solicitor knowledgeable sitting at the table with us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Mr. Green had moved and Mrs. Culp had seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. I will now accept to look at recognition of guests, if anyone in the audience would like to address the board that has not addressed the board yet for any other reasons that is not on the agenda. Anyone? Seeing none, I will now look for a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
If I may.
Yes, oh, please.
I would like to thank all the work of the administration and the association officers for reviewing this plan, having input to this plan, but I would especially like to thank all of you this evening. I've seen some school board meetings that have become volatile.
Yeah, we don't want to.
I profess.
Thank you.
I appreciate everyone's input, thoughtfulness, and respectful interactions this evening. Thank you.
And I think the board also echoes that. Okay. Now I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I don't believe anybody has discussion on that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.